Hi, this is Andrew Malekoff. I'm the Executive Director of North Shore Child and Family Guidance Center, and this is Perspectives on Pandemic 2020. And my special guest today is Dr. Ariel Botta, and she is a PhD social worker who has worked at Boston Children's Hospital as a psychotherapist and researcher for the past 20 years. She's a teaching associate at Harvard Medical School in psychiatry and an adjunct professor at many colleges in the Boston area. She's taught mindfulness to children, adolescents, adults, and professionals, both nationally and internationally, for the past 15 years. She's also a certified yoga instructor, and her research is on the use of mindfulness to decrease stress, burnout, and compassion fatigue in the among healthcare workers. So welcome, Dr. Botta. It's very nice to see you today, and thank you for joining this broadcast. And you've been talking to both young and older folks about how to bring their minds into the present moment when everyone seems so focused on the future and when are things going to open up and be normal again? What kind of things are you hearing from kids and adults?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andy. I mean, I think I'm hearing probably what most people are hearing, which is that folks of all ages are feeling sadness, loss, fear, anger, helplessness, isolation, and actually desperateness. But in addition to that, what I've really also been hearing when I pay close attention is that people are also feeling more deeply connected because they're making more efforts to find community or to connect to those whom they love. Feeling a sense of empowerment. I actually just was on a call with a 19-year-old this morning in a group, and she said something that just bowled me over. She said, well, Ariel, I'm really learning how to parent myself right now, which would be developmentally a wonderful thing for a 19-year-old to say. But it struck me because as she talked more about parenting herself, what she was saying was she doesn't have a job or a school or these markers that basically help her keep routine. So, and even her parents, who actually are very involved in her life, are also grappling with losing these bearings. So in essence, what I heard when she said that is that we're all actually grappling with learning to parent ourselves without the structure that we used to have, which is kind of an interesting thing. And then I think that some kids are feeling less stressed because school, as we know, since we work with young people, is one of the biggest stressors in their lives. So some are feeling less stressed. And many, because I'm a group worker, just as you are, Andy, many are feeling really comforted by knowing that we're all in the same boat. And this is a really rare experience in our culture that everyone, even around the world, is in the same boat, which is kind of a beautiful and empowering thought. When we can offer some facilitation about what to do about that, about those feelings. So those are the things that I'm hearing across the board.
So it must not be easy, though, to introduce the concept and the practice of mindfulness when people seem so preoccupied. And, it's sort of, you're an old hand at this, and I know about it. I've been to trainings with you, and people in the profession know about it. But the average person, aside from maybe a fleeting look at a newspaper article or something that runs across their TV screen, really don't know what that's all about. It just seems a little far out for them.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And again, I think that the responses really vary. So a good number of people, the majority are adults, are pretty excited about learning mindfulness techniques to bring them some more comfort and a sense of control in the world. And then there are a group of people who are a bit anxious about approaching the practice of mindfulness because of some misconceptions about mindfulness, or they may very well know what mindfulness is, which is the ability to focus on the present moment on purpose and without judgment. And so by practicing that, it also draws attention to what's going on inside of ourselves, which might really make people nervous right now, because I think many of us are in very defensive states, and our defenses are there for a reason, to protect us. So I think it is certainly mindfulness, I can say from being a practitioner for some time, is a powerful and empowering and courageous practice, because what we're committing to is being in full contact with whatever shows up in life. And that could be the joys and the excitement, and it could also be the sorrows and the fears and the anger. So the truest sense of mindfulness is that we're in full contact with all of what life brings to us. So that the goal is that we can live a full and valued life. So we are just living life to the fullest, knowing that everything is our teacher. So the joys are our teachers, but the sorrows and the fears are also our teachers. So this is a very rich context right now in the pandemic for anybody to be learning or practicing mindfulness, because the lessons are everywhere. And then I also think there's a misconception about mindfulness, that it's associated with religions or spiritual belief systems. And while it can be traced back thousands of years to many schools of religious and spiritual thought and practices, there's also science to mindfulness, and it was brought to the United States in the 1970s by John Kabat-Zinn. And since then, there has been a very large evidence base to show that mindfulness can improve our sleep, our concentration, our ability to understand ourselves and others, therefore can lead to having deeper interpersonal relationships, can decrease depression and anxiety, it can help us sleep better, and it can improve our overall well-being, among some of the benefits of mindfulness. So I think once people understand the depth and the breadth of the practice, they are all in, for want of a better term, because they really do recognize that it is a way to basically get more comfortable with uncertainty, which is really what we're all experiencing right now, is a great deal of uncertainty. Yeah, so I do explain to people quite transparently that mindfulness is not equal to calmness or peacefulness, which is the way it has sometimes been marketed, but it really is to lead a full and valued life.
So when you say that, mindfulness is about, staying focused in the present, purposefully, and without judgment.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about that? We have, hopefully there'll be many parents, maybe some teens, possibly even kids a little bit younger. What does that mean, purposefully and without judgment?
Yeah, it means that we move through this practice with intentionality. And so an intention, we often confuse it with a goal. A goal is usually future oriented and something that we want to accomplish, and something that's usually measurable. An intention is something that we embody in the present moment. So mindfulness has a lot to do with intentionality, which is where the word purpose comes from. So, and whenever we're intentional, we are more in control of a situation. So in a time when we all feel very disempowered, I think that is a fair statement. It is very empowering to know that you can set an intention for the day or for an interaction, and then embody that, or commit to fulfilling that intention. And so, for an example, an intention during the pandemic for any age, and I talk to very young children about this all the way up through the lifespan, may be to approach this day with an open mind and an open heart. Or it may be to lead with compassion in all of my interactions today. Or it may be to be gentle with myself today. because I know I'm having a hard time, as everybody is right now. So these are lovely intentions that you can set that will guide you throughout your day. You don't have to remember them or write them down or memorize them, because once it's set, it's almost set in stone, and it sort of takes on a life of its own. What's very interesting about intentions that we know from mindfulness practice is not only is it felt by the person who sets the intention, but it's actually felt by others as well. So, so my intention today was to share with an open mind and an open heart whatever I can with Andy, because this is such an important initiative. More likely than not, without me saying that, you may experience that that was my intention with the words I chose or the way I chose to share it, the information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. This could also, what I was thinking about when you were talking about, intention is, we hear so much today about wearing masks or not wearing masks, social distancing or not social distancing. We see a lot of images. And so, the focus is really not completely about yourself and keeping yourself safe. It's what you said about compassion, because a lot of these practices are about keeping the rest of the world safe, the world being the people that surround us that we care about, or maybe that we don't even know. So it seems like it ties in there and might help people in terms of, making a decision at the beginning of a day to do something that might be uncomfortable or that might affect their vanity a little bit, but that they're, intentionally doing it for those compassionate reasons.
Right, for the good of all beings. Exactly. So in some ways, this experience has really brought us out of ourselves and into a more connected world, as ironic as that is, because the world, if you look at it with your eyes, looks very disconnected. But on the contrary, when I dive deeper into mindfulness with people, what I see is that we are connecting more deeply and more profoundly, and that people are really feeling the health and mental and physical benefits of that. And I think that those are things that will stay long after the pandemic is over. And so I do think that there is some opportunity here in the pandemic for us to connect more deeply as a humanity. And think about others and not be so, have such tunnel vision about ourselves, which is very easy for all of us to do in this very busy age.
And what about the part about no judgment? What kind of things would a teenager, let's say, be judging about themselves, or a parent would be judging themselves, that mindfulness, intentional mindfulness would be something that, might help them with that?
Yeah, so the judgment piece is it's so funny. I've been having the most conversations with young people about the non-judgment. They love talking about it, because if you think about it, the world is really based on judgment. School systems are based on judgment. Even the most progressive and open-minded school systems are, because there's usually a right and a wrong answer, and there are lots of rules. So I think that it's very human. I know that it's very human for people to judge. It's part of our survival mechanism. So instantly all humans think this is good or this is bad. This is safe or this is unsafe. I want more of this or I want less of this. And it is what has allowed us to survive over time. So we're pushing back against something that is very innate to us. But when I say non-judgment, what I mean by it in the mindfulness sense is that we are so quick to judge emotions as good or bad. So pretty much if I ask anybody of any age, how would you rate anger, good or bad? Most people will say bad. How would you rate jealousy, good or bad? Most will say bad. How would you rate fear, good or bad? Most will say bad. So in the mindfulness practice, we don't actually judge emotions or experiences, for that matter, as good or bad. We see them all as teachers. So the pandemic, somebody could say, is not ideal and has brought an enormous amount of suffering to all of humanity around the world. And the pandemic has also brought some incredible lessons to us as human beings if we can see them and if we can approach them with that lens. A lot of times when I'm teaching about non-judgment, I use my number one favorite principle of mindfulness, which is called beginner's mind. And it's the concept that you're able to see something as if for the first time with curiosity and wonderment, even if you've seen it thousands of times before. This is a really beautiful practice. So there's an author who wrote a book called Going to Pieces Without Falling Apart. His name is Mark Epstein, and he is a psychiatrist who practices mindfulness. And he talks about, he's been a psychiatrist for many, many years. He talks about how at one point in his career, he felt so expert. There was really no more that he needed to learn. And he found himself going into rooms and meeting clients, having read a little bit about them prior to meeting them, and almost knowing what he was going to do with his treatment planning. But as his mindfulness practice evolved, he began to realize that he actually needed to go into these rooms to meet his clients with beginner's mind. And so his metaphor is that he used to go in with a full cup, full of knowledge, full of expertise, knowing exactly what he was going to do. But through his mindfulness practice, he began to empty his cup before he entered the room so he could enter it with an empty cup. And in doing so, he saw so many new things in each person's stories and narratives. His practice changed completely. And his practice of beginner's mind allowed room for the person, his client, to see their world with new eyes as well. So this curiosity and wonderment is a very big part of mindfulness and a big part of non-judgment, right? So in the pandemic world, for example, if I were to go out and say, here I go again, I have to mask up, put on my gloves, stand in line for hours just to get some food, all of those things are true. Nobody will deny it. But if you went in with beginner's mind, you might say, I'm going to mask up today. I'm going to notice what's different today from yesterday. There are probably some nuances that are different. You might notice that more things are in bloom than yesterday, even though you were just out 24 hours ago. You might notice how people are engaging with one another, and perhaps there's some friendliness to the way they're engaging. You might notice that the lines are a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, and wonder with curiosity what that's all about. You might notice that you're a little bit less anxious each day because you're getting into the routine of this new way of being for right now. So there's so much to notice, but if we have broad brushstrokes and make judgments, then we will also just line up with what we have judged. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. It sounds, it almost sounds like we're assuming that it was a decent childhood. It's almost like going back to being a child when you do look at the world in wonderment. So I think expression I like is which is not original, but to put your ego outside the door. And so I think everything you describe really is about that. Are there any simple breathing techniques or activities? We have limited time, but that viewers can take away that might be good for all ages to calm the nervous system and get grounded in the present?
Yes, let us definitely talk about that. But actually, before we do, Andy, what you said really resonated with me because actually, when you said going back to childhood, that is the truth about beginner's mind, because it actually is our innate, it's actually our true nature. We all came in with it. So when we practice it, we're really just going home
So life just beat us down and took us away from that, and
exactly.
mindfulness gives us a chance to get back to our beginnings.
That's right. That's exactly it. Just going home. That's what we call it. And then, yes, I'm happy to talk about breathing techniques. And I actually have a few simple, actually it's within the context of breathing techniques. There's a really wonderful professional named Joan Borinsenko, who has some really nice free resources, which I can forward to you, Andy, And so a little bit of this is from her and a little bit is from me and some other professionals. But there are really just a few very simple things, breathing is one of them, that people can do that can change their entire experience every day, and they take very little time. So it is true that your number one coping mechanism is with you at all times, and that is your breath. You never leave home without it. And in fact, right now, there's a deep gratitude for our ability to breathe, because our breathing is so restricted by masks. And of course, when we act from a compassionate place, we know that many are truly struggling to breathe right now. So we also just bow to the breath because we're so grateful to be able to have it. Yes, so I'm going to actually lead us through a very brief breathing activity that you can do anytime. It takes all of 1 minute, and I will do the counting. And in essence, it's 5 seconds on the inhale and 5 seconds on the exhale. And again, you don't have to think about anything but the cues that I give. So if you are sitting up, sit upright, and if you can, place your feet flat on the floor. And if you're lying down, it's fine to do the practice that way as well. And when I cue the breathing, you will inhale through your nose and exhale through your lips with pursed lips, almost like you're going to whistle. So inhale through the nose and exhale through the lips. So let's begin by emptying all of the oxygen from your lungs. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And inhale. And exhale. And return to your regular rhythm of breathing. And if your eyes are closed, you can slowly open them. And just notice what you feel in your mind and your body right now. Andy, what do you notice in your mind and your body right now?
There's nothing there.
Nothingness, yes.
It is. There was nothing there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was emptied out.
Emptied out. And in mindfulness, we call that spaciousness. When we catch moments where we're not thinking about the past or the future, that's actually a beautiful state. That's what we like to see in mindfulness, because we all of a sudden have no sense of time. And it's when we have spaciousness in our mind, that's when we can be the most creative, see things as if we've never seen them before, find solutions to problems that we couldn't normally find. But in addition to that, in this 1 minute of breathing, it shifts us away. It allows us to shift away from the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, which we're often in. Just to be honest, all of us are often in a lot right now during the pandemic, to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and renewal space that our brains go into. And so basically, with 1 minute of breathing, it calms our entire nervous system.
Well, that's a great lesson, and I'm glad that it was something that you could do in 1 minute.
Yeah.
When I said that, my mind was empty, it also made me think how often parents will say to kids, "What were you thinking?" And I guess they were in that state that I was just in. So there's one more question that I have to ask you before we wrap up today.
Yes.
That, many people feel helpless in the face of such worldwide suffering that we've all witnessed and some have experienced.
Yeah.
And I understand that you've been teaching something called compassion practice and
Mhm.
encouraging self-compassion to address how hard people are being on themselves for not getting enough done.
Yeah.
We're in a different place and you just can't accomplish things in the same way. Can you just say more, about that would give people some insight and maybe some ideas about how to be a little easier on themselves?
Absolutely, Andy. Just quick time check. How much time do we have left, just so I can consider what I'll share?
You take your time. We have enough time for you to share what you want, and then I'll let you know.
Okay. So let's begin with defining what compassion is. So compassion is the ability to recognize the suffering in another and the wish to take action to alleviate it. So again, compassion is the ability to recognize the suffering in another and the wish to take action to alleviate it. Self-compassion is a very similar definition. It's our ability to recognize when we are suffering and our willingness and wish to alleviate our own suffering. So it's actually a quite action-oriented process, which is why I always go to this practice when people feel helpless, which is a universal experience that we're all feeling right now. So I've heard a lot of people be really hard on themselves. And the narrative that I keep hearing is that people say, I had all this extra, well, some people have extra time, let's be clear. So a lot of people, because of their work right now, don't have extra time. So it's important that we acknowledge that some people are working more hours than they've ever worked in their lives. And then some people have so much time on their hands. So there's definitely a big divide right now. But for people who are in a position where they have more time on their hands, they're actually beating themselves up a lot about it and saying that they should be, cleaning out their closets or doing huge projects that they would have never had opportunities to do had it not been for the pandemic. And so every day they've been very hard on themselves about not being as productive as they feel that they should be during this time, to which I always go ahead.
I could interrupt you for a second. And also when I'm listening to that, it's some of the kind of things we hear about parents telling their kids, what are you doing in your room? Did you do your homework?
That's
Are
right.
you working on this project? And so it's the kind of dynamic that I think might be one that many families can relate to.
Yes, 100%. And so that's where we're hard on each other and we're hard on ourselves. And it's all just, it's not malicious in any way. It's all grasping for some kind of sense of control in a world that feels very much out of control. So what I say about that is to be gentle with ourselves. That's usually, and with each other. That's usually the language I use. And when I'm teaching self-compassion, I say, I want you to listen to your inner dialogue, and I want you to hear the things you say to yourself, just to notice them with no judgment. So people start to write down the things that they say to themselves. What is wrong with me? I got nothing done today. Why can I not get out from under myself? Is there, why am I not taking advantage of all of this time? I should be doing should have. People should themselves constantly. And the way I respond to that is that most people are in fight, flight, or freeze the majority of the time if efforts are not made to pull ourselves out of that space, like with a simple breath exercise or some other mindfulness techniques. So we need to be very gentle with ourselves because we do not have the same mental or emotional capacity that we would have on any other given day. That is just a fact. So the moment we line up with that and accept that, we will be gentler with ourselves. Also, once people have made that list of the things that they find they're saying to themselves, I have them look at it and ask them to bring to mind somebody that they loved so deeply. It could be a friend, a family member, to somebody they care for so deeply. And then I ask them, would you say those things to that person? And they instantly say, no, I would never say those things to that person. And I say, why not? And they say, that's not kind and it's not even true. And I said, then why is it true for you? You know, and so it is, I will say quite honestly, it is the hardest of the mindfulness practices because it's so easy to be hard on ourselves. And it's easier for us to be kind to others. But to begin the compassion practice, it has to begin with us because we have to be full. We have to have enough reserve in order to give to other people. So usually the mindfulness self-compassion practice begins within. And if we want to do another broadcast, Andy, we could do one where we walk through a practice together. It's a bit of a meditation. And then once we fill ourselves with what we need, so for example, in essence, it would be, if I were talking to myself, I would say, what I wake up in the morning and I'd say, what do I need today? And then I might say, may I feel peaceful? May I feel calm? May I practice self-compassion, right? So these are the things that I know I need today, which might be different than what I need tomorrow or yesterday. And so that would be my practice. So the next step after you do your own practice is you start thinking about what other people need. You could begin with a loved one, somebody you care about, somebody who's suffering, who's having a hard time. And then you think about what they need. And you imagine, may he, she, or they feel such and such, like peace or happiness. May he, she, or they feel loved. May she, he, or they feel safe. And the whole practice is one where we visualize, like transferring that energy and transferring that emotion to another person. And then you can extend the practice, the compassion practice, to the world. And then our language changes to may we be, may we have, which is a very powerful practice. This idea that we move as a collective, as all sentient beings, all living things, that may we all have peace. May we all feel safe. May we all feel calm, whatever it is that we wish for in the world. This may seem very minor, but actually we have some research to show that people really experience when somebody is sending them these this practice, this meditation. And so sometimes if you are actually doing a compassion meditation for someone you care for, and you're intensely in the practice, they may text you or call you during that time and just say, I don't know why, but I felt like you were thinking about me. So it's just a new way to think about energy and how energy is transmitted in the world. We know that energy and moods and emotions are transmitted. That's why when somebody is so angry and they swear at you at the beginning of the day, you can carry that anger around with you for the rest of the day and transfer it onto other people. The same is true for compassion. And you can start your day compassionately, and then it can spread to many, many people throughout the day.
Well, that's a great note to end on. So this has been Guidance Center Perspectives on Pandemic 2020. And my special guest has been Dr. Ariel Botta, who is a long practicing and expert on mindfulness. And I hope that that our viewers were able to get some helpful insights today. I certainly was. Each time I hear you, it just adds a little more texture to your lessons. And so I want to thank you and thank our audience for listening in and watching us today. So have a great day, everyone. So long.
Thank you, Andy.